and Mork. For Mork is cunning but brutal, and we are brutal but cunning. Welcome to Waaaghtaktiks on how to use Ork Kommandos. So today we're going to talk about how to use Mandos. I'm going to simplify it. Just 3 main points to focus on when you're deploying them, using them, putting them on your list. And then I actually have some pictures for actual visual representation of what I'm trying to explain to you. To follow up with a list for an example of a kind of list I would use. There's many variations, which we always go over, just so you guys always know. And with that, let's get into it. So, what is the Kommando's purpose in the wall? I like to break it down into 3 points right here because I didn't want to make this a 1-hour video. We're going to try to make it nice and simple because this is 101. Deny, bait, and score. So in regards to that, you're dictating the battlefield pressure, and I'm going to go over a whole slide for that, and I have a picture of what I mean by that. Bait, you want to get stuff into charge range. So sometimes based off where you're going to place them being a part of your first wave going in, you know what's coming at you. And then board control is always the way of the WAAAGH. Always being prepared to score based off where you deploy them is what's going to be very important at that point, right? Whether you're playing fixed or tactical, and we'll go over that too. So that's how, boss. So let's look at their data sheet real quick in case you're new and trying to get into them and you're not familiar. So nice T5, but what's really important that I want to go over is that they can actually, once per battle in your opponent's shooting phase, before making a saving throw, it can deploy Distraction Grot. Until the end of the phase, models in this unit has a 5-up invul. Many people seem to forget that they actually have a built-in 5-up invul outside of the WAAAGH. It means the kind of durability that you're really enjoying from your Ork boys on the WAAAGH, that 5-up invul, they have built in. Not only that, but they have stealth, and what we really care about here is infiltrators. We're going to maximize infiltrators with the fact that their sneaky surprise allows them to not be fired overwatched when they move at any point. So that's very important because they're the only unit that I'm aware of that can do that at all times in 40k. We can take a quick look at their melee profiles and their weapons, but in reality, you're only going to look at the rocket launcher possibly, or the burner, which that's based off your own preference in your meta. Melee weapons, I do like to bring the breacher ram, but I understand why you wouldn't because it hits on 4s and it only has 2 attacks. Always bring the power claw, of course, because we like the power claw. Notice that they do have grenades. They don't have smoke. A lot of people wonder, like, I'm gonna think it'd pop smoke. That'd be cool. No, they don't. They just have stealth, which is like smoke anyway, so it's fine, right? But remember, they have grenades in case you want to throw the bomb squig and grenades into someone. A bit too much commitment, in my opinion, but it's always on the table for that. And as you can see, it tells you what you can choose. You can choose to replace with burner with a combat weapon and the rocket. So that's why I mentioned those. You can go through and choose based off what you're going into. Now, let's talk about what we mean by deny. So main things I'm looking for when I'm deploying and once I'm starting to move after my turn 1 movement and the enemy's possible turn 1 movement is I'm always going to be considering denying the enemies reserved from coming in based off the table edge, deep strike, and or as you can see, turn 1 redeploys, right? Some armies like, let's say, Custodes, well, they'll pick up their Terminators and then they'll come in from rapid ingress. Having Kommandos to dictate where they're going to come off the table right off early when you have the 4 corners deployment is going to help you. Also, stopping somebody coming in from the table edges, let's say guard, Leagues of Voltan, Hellblasters, some Space Marines coming off the table edge. These gun profile units that are usually typically slow and taking a while to get that angle of fire. Kommandos will stop that early game, and I'll show you visually what I mean by that. So keep that in mind when you're deploying them. It's not necessarily that you always have to be pressure, right? Enemy deployment, you get to dictate what happens to the enemy infiltrators, right? You understand, hey, do you have infiltrators on your list? Oh, okay. No? Wait, do you have a Land Raider over there? Let me see. Hold on. I'm not going to deploy my Mandos first, right? This is how you should be going into the game, considering your Mandos when you're considering how am I going to affect the enemy deployment. If they have infiltrators, you're going to immediately try to get your Kommandos on the battlefield. If they don't, now you're going to put them possibly even last. You're going to look at what they have, where they place their possible scouts, their big slow transports, or their slow moving gun lines, right? And then that's where you're going to dictate based off the enemy deployment, or you're going to influence theirs by letting them know, huh, I'll get in your way, right? So that's what we go into move blocking, delaying the enemy or enabling them from stopping you from staging. So let's say somebody has a Land Raider Redeemer. You already know what they're trying to do with the Black Templars. Kommandos can come into there and you know, oh, he placed it right here. I'm really not enjoying this. Maybe I'm doing fixed secondaries, so I'm actually going to look for 2 birds, 1 stone here. I'm going to go ahead and place them in the middle of the table, and if I get to go first, I run out in the open. If I don't, Then I've actually put 2 guys in the lane where the Land Raider's trying to move. Therefore, he can't do anything about it, and he cannot move into the middle of the battlefield and overwatch my staging units later or whatever else I'm trying to do. And I have examples of what I mean by that. And then scouts, right? When you've now prolonged and waited for enemy scout maneuvers, let's say they have catachans, they have 8-bound, they have a scout sentinel, they have all these different Space Marine scouts, anything they want to do, they're doing fixed, they want to go cleanse, they want to possibly deploy. You're going to stop these units from doing that, whether they be trying to kill you from an alpha strike or they're delaying them from just scoring the secondaries that they want to do, but you being able to dictate, oh, you have scouts? I'll just make a line right here and you won't be able to do anything about that. And what do I mean by that? So right here, right away, some people understand when you're putting these infiltrators on the table, you still must retain 9 inches from enemy deployments and you have to stay away from enemy models, but always maximize the 2-inch coherency here. So you can see I have a widget on the table. I have 2 inches away from a model, and then I've made conga lines. So on the picture on the right, you can see I placed a knob with the power claw and the unit boy right next to him, and then I've strung out to the middle of the table. I've stayed away 9 inches from the enemy unit, and I'm stopping these gene stealers from alpha striking me because they are a quick moving scout unit that can do their normal movement, scout 8 inches, do their normal movement, and then charge into you if they end up going first. Their Broodlord can give them dev wounds. You do not want that on your face as an orc player, because usually we like to dictate the battlefield. Now that matters as well if you're going into 8-bound. World Eaters, understanding that these guys are going to come at you. Now I don't really like that. They keep doing it to me. Maybe I can't stop it because of other means. I like to use the battle wagon, whatever it is. Here you go. Take your Mandos, maximize that 2-inch coherency rule. Put what we like to call a wishbone, where you put 2 models on the end and 2 models on the other end, and you make sure you stay 9 inches away. This now stops their scout movements, and this is the way you want to do it. If you're exposing them, intentionally trying to deny, let's say the Land Raider is the same thing. You want to stay 9 inches away, you get in the way of the Land Raider. Not saying you always do this, but this is what we're talking about. We're thinking about deny. But what if we're thinking about bait? What do I mean by bait? Some people don't like to throw things away. I understand not trying to throw things away, but Mandos are one of those units that are not going to give you immediate return on your point investment. It's not about killing, which everything else in Orcs usually is. This is why this is cunning, not necessarily always brutal, which they can be, but that's not always what you're valuing these points off, right? So dictate the enemy response. Enemies have to now be forced to commit early to you, knowing that you can WAAAGH. And early game scoring is something that they have to keep in the back of their mind. Usually Orcs are one of those armies that's known to just throw up the score as you have to try dictating them. You have to let the enemy know, hey, if I'm doing fixed, here we go. I can just easily go and deploy. Now I'm standing already near the battlefield. I've deployed there. Hey, what's up? Oh, I'm going to cleanse. I can walk out into an objective. Here you go. I'm going to deny you primary, whatever it may be. Now, leap pad forward with charges. Lure the enemy into charge range based off the placement of your commandos. You're going to tell the enemy, I have all these guys. They may be OC1, but considering I can place them where I need to be, I'm going to do that. I'm going to follow up with a Death Killer War Trike, another unit that's not a huge commitment, maybe a truck full of boys, another not huge commitment, but these units can now countercharge that unit that's coming in. Let's say it's a transport or a small response unit trying to kill your commandos because they really couldn't shoot them away reliably. They're down only 3 or 4 guys. Now you've come into charge range. From there, you leap pad forward. You appreciate the fact that you have pile-ins and consolidates, and you out-OC people with the trike and, let's say, bikers, which 2 being OC2. And then over and under commitment. Mandos are more durable than they seem at first. Being a T5 orc, having that 5-up invuln, and being stealth. If you have let's say you're playing tactical, the Grots are treating you good, you have additional CP, I'm going to go ahead and hard as nails them. Or I'm just looking at you, hey, I know how many guns you have. You don't really have the maximum firepower here. I'd like to keep these commandos alive so I can continue to do secondaries, or I want to clog up this lane on the far side of the table. I'm going to go ahead and hard nail these. If I have 3 left, I'll be happy. And why is that? Because of something like this as bait. Get in charge range, you get. So on the picture on the left, you can see I have these commandos. They've been deployed in this objective. We're playing it as it is second line of sight, floor line of sight blocking, right? So keep in mind, when you are deploying them, sometimes you don't want to be on the objective if your unit's possibly going to be killed, because then you're throwing away easy secondary for your enemy to possibly draw if they draw the secondary to, storm your objective and such, right? But if you walk onto objective, you now have to bait the enemy to commit something that has more OC than you. Let's say this Ravager, for example, that the Mando knows is in the background. This Ravager now has to move forward. It can fly. It's very quick. It can reliably move up there. You can use the tip of its lance to barely touch that objective as it's doing in this picture on the right. But based off this deployment that we have as an example, which we're using Crucible Battle, I placed Maz in range where he can move out from the left or the right of that. Most likely the left. He'll come out around the other side of that building, and he'll attempt to charge onto that Ravager. The enemy has now given me a turn one charge with Maz, which they usually hate. As then turn two, I've now dictated what they've also had to commit to, because now Maz is way further up the field than they would want to, just by the fact that I can put these Mandos this early onto the objective in a terrain piece where they're not going to be shot. And even if someone could be very quick and draw a line of fire onto them, Mandos still have stealth. Now they're sitting in cover. They're so durable on that. They can run out, throw bomb squigs on this Ravager, charge it, still be OC, still survive. So it'll still be great for that turn one. Just annoying bait. It's not a super commitment if the enemy now has to consistently go over there, and you can get counter charges off. From there on, you call the wall because now more things have been committed, and the enemy find themselves committing more than they considered. And that's the point of what these guys can be. You can also do it on the other side of the battlefield. Keep in mind, for all of these pictures, if you rewatch and look at this video, you can see that each of the pictures you can reutilize any of these points that I'm showing forward when you deploy them, whether you're using them as bait by putting them in the middle, or if you're using them for scoring by putting them in the middle from the other pictures going into this one, vice versa, right? Because we're also going to talk about scoring, which you could have used last pictures for as well. But in this example, we're going to talk about early game assured scoring based off tactical or fixed, right? Because where you're deploying them, when you're taking things into consideration, is what you're going to be able to score. So being able to dictate primary, let's say the ritual, you knowing that you're going to play the ritual, and I can actually place these dudes somewhere where they're going to put me my favorite objective, tail into a building so they can get decent durability, and now draw the enemy firepower in that way, knowing that now I have that easy placement while everything else stages, my trucks, my Maz, everybody else gets in way to kill, while the enemy goes, oh, I have to commit to this unit right away that's actually more durable than I thought. I've undercommitted, like I said point earlier. So what do I mean by that when I speak of tactical scoring, right? In regards to, let's say you're deploying them early, enemy four corners, use that as another example. You draw, investigate signals. Well, based off where you've deployed those commandos, you should be able to move with your 6-inch movement wholly within those 9 inches. Easily do that. Let's say you have the trike on the other side, you do it somewhere else. There's a bunch of different ways where you should be maximizing that when you're thinking about your tactical secondaries. You can also, of course, think about cleanse, deploy for that too. Or secure no man's land, because it's a 10-man unit. If you've placed it with that taken into consideration in the middle for a point we showed earlier, let's say on the very first pictures we were showing, you can use that same advantage that you've used to box out enemy scouts to now, hey, I've actually secured no man's land because you've strung out. So keep that in mind that, hey, even though I have to come in this way, it's helping me if I'm picking tactical. In the fixed case, maybe you can try to do different secondaries in that way, because if you're going fixed, you can think I can cleanse easier, I can deploy, and I'm more likely to engage because my Mandos already dictate my presence on the battlefield, which is very nice to have that assured assistance in your scoring and that assured placement on the battlefield as an orc, because pressure and board control is always going to be super important. And what do I mean by that? Now, again, we're using Crucible of Battle deployment. Instead, you can see that big yellow bar that I've placed there with a green line in the middle. That's the orc deployment line. And then I placed a 6-inch widget there for the orc movement. You can see that I can walk out and tag that objective. The enemy is now knowing that I can do that and out OC other units, such as transports, like we always say. The trike is in position as well, that it can move up and double down on that and commit to more OC or more durability in that way, that if I need. So on the left, you can also see that I've placed a Screamer Killer in regards to if the enemy has to move down that field. If I get to move, I can walk out and advance and block that Screamer Killer from actually running up and getting your trike to get killed early as well, right? So never forget that not only are you dictating where they're being placed, even though you have now this potential while you've been deployed in this corner to do a secondaries, like we talked about, but you can also stop enemies' movement, stop enemies' reserves, all in one with all of these points I've mentioned in mind. That's why, to begin all of this, we said that we were going to talk about the 3 ways that these guys are going to be used and maximized. And that's what I mean. I've gone over how they're supposed to be scored. Let me pull this up. They should be denying, be utilizing as bait, and or as score. Keep in mind that you can do 2 or 3, all 3 of these at once, just based off dictating where you deployed and your 6-inch movement, right? You take those 2 major things into consideration, the enemy's capability to interact with you, and you either deny, bait, or score. But you've built that into your list as a tool because everything else on your list is now going to appreciate that, whether it's a Gargantuan Squiggoth or your Death Killer Warstrike, or for the example we're going to show here on the list, we're going to show Gghoul. So let's start with this list example that we're going to have. This is just to finalize the video by what I mean by this. You can see this is a list that's actually performed well already. We've gone over it earlier on the channel, but it's good that we show this real quick again as well, because I have really appreciated this list as it was something that I was familiar with. So we have Gghoul Thraka, Captain Badrock, War Boss with Follow Me Lads, Mazra Scragbag, and Knob with Ed Wappa's Kill Chopper, right? The fact that usually the squigs might be slow to get around table edges, easily move blocked by enemy scouting and infiltrators. We'll talk about Drakari Beastmasters can do that, right? Very annoying, very full of wounds unit, for example, right? And Drakari's not coming to play. They could see, or let's say even Gargoyles is another unit, for example. They would stop Naban Smasher Squig, Naban Squigs getting in the way where they want to get. Kommandos help dictate and get that out of the way. Then you have 2 trucks, because all you need that for is for your flash kits and your knobs, as we're going to go over. They brought a unit of Def Coptas because you appreciate that deep strike. You appreciate being able to fly. To damage 3 rockets are good. And it might, have enemies overcommit sometimes for bringing it down and such, right? We have the flash kits because you can't leave those at home, as they're really good to have that being the ability to participate in the shooting phase, which is something Orks tend to underappreciate. But in this meta, with a lot of movement shenanigans and enemies that want to put pressure on us as well, having the capability to shoot them and to overwatch them cannot be underappreciated. 2 units of Gretchen, because you got to be able to screen your home field objective. The Kommandos, I like to put the Power Claw or the Breacher Ram / a rocket as well. And then in this list, you have the 5 Mega Knobs with, in my case, I like to do Twin Kill Slots, but you can say Power Claws. Excuse me. You have the Knobs with 10 Power Claws, because everybody loves a Scalpel unit with the War Boss. Big Bricker Squighog boys to appreciate Head Wappa Skill Chopper, and then 1 unit of Storm boys. I like to have more for the scoring potential, but that's why we've talked about the Mandos are used for the scoring potential as well. You have to allow them to do it too, and your Def Copters will help you as well. So we have to definitely appreciate Kommandos for how they're actually supposed to be used. This was a quick just 101 guide on how it can be done. I'll look at the chats in a second, but Mandos are something that are going to be dictated off of your meta, based off you as an individual, knowing what you're going into. If you're going into Leagues of Voltan and they have a bunch of Sagittars that are scouting, you might want them. If you're going into 8-bound and they have a bunch of 8-bound, from World Leaders that are 8-bound that are coming in and curing 1 pressuring 2, you're going to be considering Mandos more than someone else. If your friend tends to play with Gene Stealers who aren't considered meta, you probably consider Kommandos as well. But let's say you don't deal with any of that and you're just playing with typical Space Marines, or you're dealing with something else that doesn't really use infiltrators or scouts in your meta. I can understand why you don't appreciate Kommandos. But us as Orc players understanding their value and how they can be used and optimized is very important as we go into getting our codex, because Kommandos very likely are going to keep a similar role. And all it takes is a little bit of point adjustments, and all people will start using Kommandos. If GW drop them 10, 15 points, they'd be very, very appealing in a lot of ways, because being able to dictate board presence, enemy pressure, your own pressure, slowing down land raiders, and annoying the enemy units that have great overwatch into our infantry are all things that only Kommandos can do and other armies cannot even do. So they might not be meta for you right now as the whole at the world, right? But in our Great War, we take into consideration all war bosses, and for you as your player to make your own choices with just being given the knowledge. This is what I'm telling you. This is what they're due. When you start playing on your own, you'll understand what you're supposed to do more and more. If you play into demons and they bring a bunch of Nurglings, you'll understand how Mandos will stop Nurglings from getting in the way of your Squighog boys, your truck spams, everything like that. So don't listen to necessarily what's always being told by the big head honchos. I understand that people aren't always doing well with them, and they cost a pretty penny. They really do. But that's why going over something like this is of great value to you, because then we can really know how to use these guys on the first go and start maximizing them, whether you're dealing damage, scoring your points, and denying enemy their scoring, right? Because that's how Orks do. We play for the score. We play for the points. Now, that being said, I'm gonna look at the chats. That way, you guys have any questions or considerations, right? Like one of them I'll talk about is Snickrot. We'll go over that right now, and then the food for thought, because you guys always have great ideas. I always had the Breacher Ram because it's effective for the extra power claws or 3 during the wall. Yes, sometimes you want that. Now, I've been mostly using Snickrot as a deep strike, action monkey, and or assassinate. But I'm not really effective at doing that stuff though. Yeah, I would say Snickrot is the cheap way of trying to do what Kommandos do. And if you're playing for a cheap tool, right, you're going to get cheap results. Not that I'm offending you. This is how I felt when I went over using Snickrot. People are like, man, just pay for just a Snickrot. Just do it. Yes, but a full unit of Mandos will do the job at a premium cost at the premium level. Because not being able to ignore Overwatch, not being able to fully outline and stop units that are scouting, or maybe it will say delay to ignore emissary, or being able to lay a custode unit. These are things that you want to do. Stop unit from getting an objective, which is something else that I could have gone over earlier. But Mandos are used for a cunning level, and that's what you're paying for with the premium cost, is the ability to pull these cunning maneuvers off. And Snickrot doesn't allow you that. You get a cheap result for that. But you know, it is what it is, because Snickrot is almost appealing. And you appreciate them versus Leagues of Voltan, Space Worlds, World Eaters. Yep, those a guard trying to be in your field, knowing that they're going to regen you and come off the table edges is another one that we have to dictate. So don't ever forget that it's really based off you as the individual being smart enough to know if they work for you. I like them as Dutch boys, but I'm having a hard time trying to choose them over Storm Boys or another Truckin' Boys. There are a ton of armies that can lock down the midfield before turn 1. Yes, exactly. I think, like I said earlier, what you're paying for is what you're going to get. Truck Boys is another good possibility of that. But if you're going into the Beastmaster with, Drakari, they can run up and get you 8-bound, stuff like that. You can just completely nullify those guys by using Kommandos. So if you're willing to pay the premium cost for the premium results, you'll get them. And you're not, then, Boys in a truck are just a more versatile tool. It's not that they're bad. It's just that they're a more versatile tool. In my group, he has been good at making my opponent screen and will commit to. Exactly. Snickrot can still do that, but Kommandos do it even better. But Snickrot has a good taste of that if you're willing to attempt this idea and this meta in your head. And Kommandos are what get you the result once you've kind of understood what missions, where they should be deployed, and where they get the most value. And then we have ECOP for 5 gifted Waaaghtaktiks memberships. Whoa, for ECOP. Very, very generous of you. I very much appreciate you. Thank you very much. You're always very generous and grateful. You're very good commitment to Great WAAAGH. And it's, being good to put to good use. At Adepticon, we're going to be handing out shirts and stickers and meeting you guys. So thank you very much for supporting the WAAAGH ECOP. It means a lot to us, and it helps us do what we're supposed to do, because it takes a good commitment from us to do this great war. So when you do great things for us, we appreciate it. So thank you. So we have Snickrot stops infiltrators and can redeploy. It's more useful for more things. Mandos do it better for a single thing or the multiple things that we went over today, because it wasn't a single thing. It was multiple things. Snickrot can't do what the Kommandos can do, but he can do some similar things. And I think he's a good option for a cheaper value if you want to test the waters into what you're trying to do here, right? But Snickrot is another conversation, as he, in my opinion, needs a point decrease. Though I'm glad you guys brought him up. Very important to consider Snickrot in that. I just think right off the bat, it's one or the other. It's not you're gonna pick Kommandos and Snickrot. That becomes way too much of a cost. Snickrot's too expensive, and so are Mandos. It's really one or the other. That's why I was just stick to how to do Kommandos, because this is a one-on-one video just to get you guys stuck in, get you guys confident, let you guys know where we start with this, and then you, as the individual war boss, you figure it out and you use the tool to a maximum value. And that's how you use Kommandos in the Great WAAAGH, right? So let us know any other videos you want us to do in the future. Unit types and such, we'll put out polls for that. You can let us know with the Ork Codex coming out. Do you like the pictures of actual visual representations? Do you want more details on the list? Or what I mean by the examples? I don't want to get too wordy or long in the explanations of the videos, but let me know exactly what you guys mean. or what you guys really need and appreciate, because I'll do that more. I personally thought, hey, me visual representations at where I was putting these guys on what deployments I thought would be great value, instead of me just going over it and not really telling you what I mean. So this was very much intended with the pictures to show you exactly where I would put these things and why I would put them there and what circumstances I would put them there. And sometimes they were interchangeable with those pictures, so keep that in mind too. So yeah. And we have another 5 WAAAGH gifted Mac membership from Zach Shook. Whoa! Thank you for the continued support as well. I know you war bosses are a big deal, and you guys are a great value and always very commitment. And that's why we have a bunch of grots and squigs and orc boys in our WAAAGH and our chat. You guys are getting badges. You guys are able to commit and talk and support the WAAAGH and help with our raffles and everything as well. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much, Zach Shunk. Very generous of you. Snickra by himself can still be a target of Overwatch. Yes, he can. And then he's immediately killed. And he gives away Assassinate right off the rip. And usually you want Mazrog to be the Assassinate tempting target, which is another topic in itself, right? But that's why I don't consider that, because you're kind of giving that up too. And orc lists are ready for the most part give up Assassinate. So therefore, you might just give up a fixed Assassinate an easy way instead of using fixed Assassinate as bait. So there's a couple of reasons why not to use Snickra, in my opinion. Dedicated to different scenarios according to different matchups and who goes first and who goes second. That's very specific, but we can talk more about that. Let me know what you mean, exactly what you mean by that. That's a good thing to start with, right? Especially because we're gonna go with Codex coming up. I will run max Mega Knobs as I can. Yeah, Mega Knobs are awesome, right? And what's it? More video about deployments. Okay, so more videos about deployments for certain missions. That's something to be considered. That's a good one too. All right. So thank you very much for your response. I appreciate you guys. The Kommandos are a tool for the cunning, and it's always great to be brutal. But remember, we have 2 gods, Gork and Mork. And it's always time for the rise of the green tide. Whoa!